All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a totally wild paradox. We're going to look at how a bunch of restless World War II veterans ended up building a massive, highly regulated global syndicate. We're talking about the Hells Angels, an outlaw club that gets totally romanticized in pop culture, but actually operates with the ruthless precision of a multinational corporation. So think about it. How exactly do you take a rowdy local biker club and turn it into one of the most fiercely protected, literally trademarked brands on Earth? It's crazy, right? We're talking about guys who made it their life's mission to reject all of society's rules, but somehow ended up building an empire with bylaws stricter than your average Fortune 500 company. To really understand how they pulled that off, we got to go back to the very foundation of their identity. And the absolute DNA of this club starts with the 1%er diamond patch. Here's the story. Back in 1947, a huge California motorcycle rally in a town called Hollister got totally out of hand, sparking this massive national media outrage. The American Motorcyclist Association supposedly stepped in to do some damage control, basically claiming, hey, 99% of riders are law-abiding citizens. But the outlaws? Oh, they weren't insulted at all. They actually leaned into it, proudly claiming that remaining 1% as a badge of honor for those who live completely outside the rules. So, tracing their origins, picture this. It's 1948, and you have these young veterans coming home with massive adrenaline withdrawals. They essentially trade their bomber planes for Harley-Davidsons. Founder Otto Friedli officially starts the club in Fontana, California, and he names it after a 1930 Howard Hughes aviation film called Hells Angels, which, by the way, had already inspired the names of brave WW2 bomber squadrons. Fast forward to the 1950s, and they adopt their iconic death head winged skull logo, a symbol that was about to be feared and legally trademarked worldwide. Now, founder Otto Friedli originally called them just a bunch of guys who like to have fun. But, well, hanging out and riding fast doesn't exactly scale, does it? Maintaining a rapidly growing club required a level of discipline that Friedli's early groups simply didn't have. This loose collection of rebels was basically begging for a major corporate restructuring. Enter Ralph Sonny Barger. In 1957, this young rider helped found the Oakland, California chapter and essentially stepped up as the club's CEO when Friedli went to prison. Barger wasn't just another biker. The guy had a ruthless mind for organization and brand building. He was about to completely transform the club from a chaotic gang into a structured global machine. Basically, Barger franchised the Outlaws. He legally incorporated the club, moved the mother chapter to Oakland, and get this, officially trademarked the Hells Angels name and that death head logo. He laid down the law big time. We're talking mandatory dues, heavy fines for missing their weekly meetings, which they called church, and he even banned smoking weed and using hard drugs during meetings just to protect the club's business operations. Decades later, federal RICO cases would reveal the absolute irony of all this. Being the ultimate rebel actually meant following one of the strictest rulebooks on the planet. Just look at the structure detailed by the Department of Justice. They had regional officers, liaisons, and a rigid chain of command that literally rivaled any corporate flowchart out there. They even built what might be the world's most intense HR pipeline. I mean, you can't just hop on Amazon, buy a leather jacket, and call yourself a member. No way. You start out as a hang-around. If they happen to tolerate you, you become a prospect, which means enduring a grueling, years-long vetting process where you handle all the menial tasks. It's essentially the ultimate high-stakes, unpaid internship, and you're only allowed to wear partial patches. Only if you survive all of that do you earn the right to wear the full patch death head. And because only those full patch members can wear that fiercely protected logo, the club engineered a super clever corporate workaround for their fans. Supporters use the number 81. Why? Because H and A are the 8th and 1st letters of the alphabet. So if you ever spot a Support 81 t-shirt out in the wild, well, you now know exactly what global brand they're backing. Okay, let's fast forward to the 1960s. This is where things get really wild. This highly regimented biker culture crashes headfirst into the Bay Area hippie movement. Suddenly, you've got two entirely different groups of societal outcasts forced to share the exact same San Francisco streets, and both of them are viewed by mainstream society as absolute menaces. It was the ultimate culture clash. Think about it. In one corner, you have the hippies, anti-war, super liberal, free-flowing, and, running on LSD. In the other corner, the Hells Angels, strongly patriotic, politically conservative, fiercely loyal to their bylaws, and running on a mix of cheap beer and benzocaine. It was an explosive mix of totally different values and totally different chemicals. The legendary journalist Hunter S. Thompson actually rode with the club for a year. before they turned on him and beat him up, by the way. And he totally nailed this strange dynamic. He wrote, "The difference between the student radicals and the Hells Angels is that the students are rebelling against the past, while the angels are fighting the future." Literally, their only common ground was a shared disdain for the present status quo. Yet, for this brief, incredibly weird moment in time, they actually became counterculture icons. They partied with author Ken Kesey and his merry pranksters. They hung out with famous poets like Allen Ginsberg, and they were regularly hired by rock legends like the Grateful Dead to act as a heavy-handed alternative security force. For a minute there, they were the ultimate bad boys of the 60s pop culture scene. But then, December 1969 happens. That bizarre romantic alliance snapped in half, and the whole counterculture dream died a pretty brutal death at the Altamont Free Concert in California. See, Altamont was just an absolute disaster. The Rolling Stones hired the Angels for stage security and supposedly paid them with $500 worth of beer. Bad idea. Fueled by massive crowds, soaring tension, and way too much alcohol, the event descended into complete chaos. It ended in tragedy when an 18-year-old concertgoer was fatally stabbed by a Hells Angel right in front of the stage. Just like that, the romantic myth of the free-spirited outlaw vanished overnight. Facing intense heat from law enforcement and a massive public backlash after Altamont, Sonny Barger pulled the ultimate corporate crisis management move. Get this, he hired public relations firms. Suddenly, the world's most feared bikers started organizing children's toy runs and local blood drives, launching this aggressive apology tour to rebrand themselves as just a misunderstood group of motorcycle enthusiasts. But behind the scenes of those charity blood drives, they were quietly executing a massive international expansion. Just looking at the DOJ tracking, they grouped chapters into tightly controlled regions, holding international corporate summits to expand into Europe, South America, and Australia. They weren't just a club anymore, guys. They were a full-blown global franchise. Which brings us to today, 6,000. That's the estimated number of full-patch Hells Angels operating right now, spread out across roughly 600 chapters in over 60 countries. From a few restless veterans tinkering in a California garage, they scaled into a worldwide juggernaut. But as any CEO will tell you, explosive corporate growth creates fierce rivals. Their global expansion triggered decades of bloody territorial biker wars over the illicit drug trade and absolute dominance. They clashed heavily with rival Big Four clubs like the Outlaws and the Bandidos. The most notorious of these was the horrific Quebec biker war in Canada, which claimed over 160 lives in the 90s and early 2000s. So looking back at this totally incredible history, we are left staring right at the ultimate irony of the one percenter. A group of men who made it their life's work to reject absolutely all of society's expectations ended up legally trademarking their logo, building a ruthless HR pipeline, and heavily regulating everything right down to their weekly meeting attendance. Which leaves us with this final thought to wrap up our explainer. Did the Hells Angels actually escape the system, or did they just use American corporate ingenuity to build a much stricter, highly trademarked system for themselves? It's a lot to think about. Thanks so much for hanging out with me to explore this and keep questioning the history behind the headlines.